Welcome. We are talking politics and religion without killing each other. I'm your host, Corey Nathan. It is an honor to be a part of the Democracy Group, a network of podcasts that examines what's broken in our democracy and how we can work together to fix it. Sheesh, got a lot of fixing to do. And more stuff's getting broken every day. But before we get started, I do have some calls to action. One, I usually don't go through this in detail. I've been trying to make it shorter, but I'm going to go through it in detail today. One, subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you've been listening, that's awesome. Thank you so much for listening. That's great. But now we're sharing video on YouTube. It's youtube.com/@politicsandreligion. And it's cool to engage with some folks on there. It's different than other platforms that I'm on because I can't curate who gets to chime in and who doesn't. So it's a little scary. And frankly, some people are assholes. But that's okay. Got to put yourself out there and engage with new people. And we'll actually talk about a little bit about that today, how to do that effectively, how to set proper boundaries. But I'll tell you what, there have been some cool comments too. And it's been cool making new friends and hearing from people that I hadn't met before. So we got a really nice comment on the Charlie Sykes episode that we shared the other day from Tululu. Tululu. I think that's how you say it. Cool name. And Tululu said, I was recommended this podcast because I like Charlie Sykes. I like Charlie Sykes too, by the way. I don't know if you could tell. But Tululu said, now I have a new podcast to listen to. Appreciate the conversation and dig the music intro and outro. I dig it too. I should, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave in the show notes the name of that piece that we've been using since the beginning. I really enjoy it. It's like I was looking for like something kind of jazzy, kind of upbeat, something just to reflect what I was hoping would be the tone of the show. So I have not gotten tired of it. 200 and something, I think we're almost at 300 episodes, if you can believe that. Still haven't gotten tired of it. So thank you so much for, checking in, Tululu. Great to have you. And hope you keep on listening and open to constructive feedback too. So please, it doesn't all have to be, it doesn't have to all be complimentary, although I welcome that, of course. Anyway, so if you're not subscribing to the YouTube channel, I'm seeing more each day, and that's great. But love to engage with people there. And the other thing to do is follow us on your podcast app. So a lot of folks have been. If you're following us on Apple, maybe follow us on Spotify. If you're following us on Spotify, maybe follow us on Castbox and Podcast Addict and Pocket Cast. There's so many. We could use your downloads. No. I'm only half kidding, but we really do appreciate you hitting that follow button or the subscribe button, depending on what you're listening on. It really does help us. And then review the show on all those podcast apps. What I've noticed is that we're doing really good in terms of downloads, which I'm really grateful for. And that helps us improve in the rankings, so more people, more new folks can discover these conversations and what we're trying to do here, which I think is a little bit different. Although there's wonderful people in this space. I mention, my friend Liz Joyner all the time with Village Square. My pals Will Chan Wright and Josh Bertram. They're doing some great work in the same intersection that I'm in. There's a bunch of people who are doing this. Obviously, Braver Angels is a great organization. We'll be talking to Monty Guzman in about a week or so. So there's other people in this space, but I think there are so many folks that are looking to have conversations on important issues, but to do it in a healthier way, if nothing else, to protect their own sanity. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to have those better conversations, sometimes with people who are doing work in this space, sometimes with people whose work I follow or politicians that I admire, and sometimes, it's just other regular guys like me that I know I have disagreements with, that I'm practicing talking politics and religion without killing each other. So you subscribing and following us on the apps is great. And we need more of it so that we can continue getting further up in the ranks, but also leaving those reviews also makes an even bigger difference if you're able to do that. Sorry, I got hair flying around. I don't know what's going on. Anyway, and lastly, join our Patreon. It's patreon.com/politicsandreligion. And it really does help me keep the lights on. So there's all these different subscriptions that I got to pay for, and I'm fortunate now that I'm building a team of folks. Some of the content that you see, the short videos, for example. My pal MJ, great editor, actually know him from the trailer industry, and rumors about us playing poker together. But MJ's been doing awesome. Anna's been helping us out. So, but it does cost something, and I value their time and their creativity and their expertise. So by you joining Patreon, by our ranking going higher, it means that we can get sponsors, and then we can afford to keep the lights on, basically. So I appreciate all of that. So thank you for indulging me while I go through those action steps. If you could do one of those things. And you know what else? One more thing. Tell a friend about it. Tell a friend that you heard a conversation on talking politics and religion without killing each other, and it got you thinking about X, Y, and Z. And then engage with them and practice this stuff. I think it'd be great if more people were at least trying. And granted, I know I go out there daily and I fall on my face and I screw it up in all kinds of ways. But I'm trying. I'm leaning forward. I'm leaning forward into having these conversations better. And that's actually what I wanted to talk about today. All of these things that I'm telling you, these action steps, it definitely helps. It helps, makes us easy to find it. It all helps so we can continue having these great conversations, exploring big topics, and asking these pressing questions like how to talk about politics and religion without killing each other, just like our title says. So today, specifically, what I wanted to get into a little bit is setting boundaries, being clear on your own limitations, or in my case, my own limitations, doing what I call clearing the brush, and then focusing on seeking conversation as opposed to looking for contests. Not contests, but conversation. Not debates, but relationships, right? So, what do I mean by all that? Setting boundaries and being clear on your own limitations. I'll give you one example. Setting a boundary. So sometimes I'm in a conversation with somebody, whether it's live or whether it's on one of the threads on Facebook or even LinkedIn, or some of the other, we're on threads, we're on Blue Sky. I'm not really on the Twitter anymore, but used to happen a lot there. But sometimes what'll happen is I'll realize that someone is not really asking me a question out of curiosity, looking for an answer, but it's more of an interrogation, as if they are. One time I was on a program on C-SPAN, and I noticed that several of the questions, they were interrogating me to check if I was really a Christian, for example. They were interrogative questions in order to check my orthodoxy, in order to start to filter me down into some sort of label that they either wanted to strip away from me, such as Christian or Jewish, because I'm still fully Jewish, but I'm also a Christian. We could explore that. If that confounds you, we can explore that in another episode. But I'm talking about interrogations. So when I recognize that that's happening, there is no need for me to submit to an interrogation. Do you want to have a conversation? Great, let's have a conversation. But are you interrogating me in order to label me one way or the other? Yeah, I'm not interested in that. It happened a couple of nights ago. I was with actually a buddy of mine that I talk to on a regular basis, and he was sort of pinning me down into something, and I could tell that it was like at least a 2 or 3 part question that he wanted me to answer basically yes or no to, so that he could come to a conclusion, so that he could kind of pound away at the conclusion that he arrived at, or pound away at me or something. And I said, whoa, stop. I said, listen, I'm not going to really respond well if you're putting me on the spot like that. I'm not going to respond well, and I said, to an interrogation. You want to have a conversation about it? Let's have a conversation about it. But I know it sounds like in your mind, you've set up this 1, 2, 3 gotcha kind of a thing. We don't need to do that. That might sound all well and good as you were kind of coming up with this series of questions, but I'm just not interested, dude. So there is no need to submit to an interrogation. What other ways can we set boundaries or be clear on your own limitations? One way is I'll be honest with somebody. I'll be candid with somebody. Hey, I'm not an expert. I am not the expert. Several times over the last few weeks, Someone says, well, how would you arrive at peace? So you want people to continue dying by the thousands and the tens of thousands in Ukraine? So what is the answer to peace? And like, look, dude, I don't need to be an expert. I am not an expert. I don't claim to be an expert. I don't know what that solution is. I'm reading Alexander Vindman's book on that region and on that fight between Russia and the different forms that Russia has taken in Ukraine and the different forms that Ukraine has taken. That's been going on literally for 1,000 years. So I am not going to sit here and give you my, 7 sentence answer to how peace can be arrived at in this conflict in that part of the world, in that region of Europe. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to learn about it. I'm going to find out who are actual experts, like the Ann Applebaums and the Alexander Vindmans and the Tom Nichols of the world. And I'm going to glean what I can from actual experts. But I don't have to pretend to be an expert. If I'm someone, again, is putting me on the spot and saying, well, what would your answer be to, solving the war? I laugh about it because it's ridiculous that somebody would think that I could come up with a solution of how to come up with peace and arrive at peace. What does that peace deal look like between Israel and Hamas? Again, been happening for thousands of years. This fight has literally been going on for thousands of years. Now, I know a little bit about that because, like I said, I grew up Jewish, going to an Orthodox synagogue. I have family in Israel, so I'm much more plugged in and have been paying attention for much longer than a lot of folks who just woke up on October 7th and realized, oh, wow, there's some conflict in the Middle East. But again, I am not an expert. I am seeking and trying to be discerning about who are real experts. Like we had Giddy Grinstein on here a few months ago, and he was literally in the room where it was happening in the late 90s and early 2000s. So I'm interested in what he has to say, people like that, when I get to talk to them, or seeking out true experts in that region. Setting a boundary, being clear on your own limitations. My own limitation is I'm not an expert. You want to talk to me about the Mets and what it's like being a Mets fan? I'm an expert on being a diehard Mets fan. I can talk to you about that, you know. But there's not too many things I'm an expert on. I have a vocation. I wouldn't say I'm even an expert in podcasting, although I've been earnestly not just practicing the art of making podcasts and studying this medium and this business now since 2018, since I discovered the medium, and it's now a full-time job. But I wouldn't say that I'm even an expert in this yet. Maybe ask me 5 years from now. Do I have my 10,000 hours in doing this stuff? There's certain aspects of it that maybe I have arrived at 10,000 hours. I just don't feel like I'm there yet. But that is something that's an area that I will speak. I'm ready to have a much more in-depth conversation about, or where another business that I've been in since 1999, I'm not going to claim to be an expert, but I might be able to provide more informed, nuanced, in-depth analysis. But as far as coming up with how to arrive at peace in the Middle East, or how to come up with a peace deal between Ukraine and Russia, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert. I'm going to tell you things that I've read, inclinations that I have. It happens quite frequently. No more than a month ago, I was having a conversation with a dear, dear friend of mine who feels very differently about gun legislation in the United States than I do. But I told him right off the bat, dude, I'm not a gun owner. So this is not an area where I'm going to assert my opinions as if they're authoritative. I don't know what the solutions are. I have inclinations, I have dispositions, I have desired goals. I want less kids to die from from guns, from mass shootings. But I don't have the solutions. It's not an area of expertise for me. So I said it wasn't even a boundary. I was just expressing, like, if you're looking to get into a fight with me because you generally feel differently about gun legislation than I do, I'm not going to pretend to get into a debate with you about it, because it's not something that I have an expert level knowledge about. Nor am I going to be, and I'll discuss a little bit more about this in a second, but nor am I going to be swayed by all of the facts and information that you throw at me with your own expertise on the subject. So there's no need to submit to interrogations. Also, there's no need to pretend to be an expert in something where you're not. But we are discerning, We can use our minds. We can use our basic intuition, if you will, in order to find good experts in any given field and to start to develop a vocabulary about important subjects, important issues. So that's one thing. But the other thing too is in terms of setting boundaries and being clear on my limitations, I have no need to defend positions that I don't hold. So I've made it very clear on this show for a long time that Donald Trump is not somebody that I would ever vote for. I cannot imagine a scenario, given his record of what he's said and done and his character. I cannot imagine a scenario that I would vote for him for anything. I would not hire him for one of my companies. I would not vote for him for freaking dog catcher. I would not hire him, or if somebody owned a freaking McDonald's. He's an expert in McDonald's. I give you that. But if my friend owned a McDonald's franchise, I would not encourage that person to hire him to run his, McDonald's location. Nope, not going to do it. This, I don't need to go down the rabbit hole as to why that is. But the reason I bring it up is a lot of folks assume that since I will not vote for Donald Trump, that I'm all of these other things. Oh, well, you want to, I don't know, I don't know, just pick any number of talking points that Sean Hannity is rattling off today, that Dan Bongino has been rattling off, that Mark Levin has been rattling off, that any of the non-news shows on Fox News or OANN, or any of the right-wing media ecosystem, has been any given day. The assumption is that if I did not only vote for Donald Trump, but passionately support him, that I am part of the left and I'm all these other things, that I'm a Marxist, I'm un-American, that I'm not a patriot, that I'm, all these other things that, I want open borders, and I want to take everybody's guns away. And if someone, I'll give you a specific example. So after George Floyd was murdered in May of 2020, there were a lot of protests, as many of us know. Now, in a small percentage of those protests, violence broke out. But even in those, I think the number was about 8% of the protests, there was some violence, which means 92% of the protests that occurred throughout 2020. This is an important stat. I'm not into giving part of what I want to talk about is you can't overwhelm people with facts and stats, and it's not persuasive. But I do find this compelling, that 92% of the protests during 2020 were entirely peaceful. Now, 8%, unfortunately, there was some violence. But in those 8% of protests and demonstrations where the violence did break out, it was a small minority of people who engaged in violence and looting and other such illegal activities. So if I'm talking to someone and somehow the conversation veers towards the protests of 2020, what happened in the summer of 2020, and the assertion is, so you're in favor of looting what happened in Portland or other cities where violence happened. So the answer is, listen, dude, I will not defend people who engaged in illegal activity, or more recently, the protests on college campuses last year. Now I am pro-Israel. I'm in favor of Israel's right to exist, while at the same time, I am not in favor of the way that Benjamin Netanyahu has executed this war on so many different levels. So there's nuance there. But if somebody says, like I was mentioning last week, if somebody says, "Oh, well, yeah," I just cut this person off because they basically said I was de facto anti-Semite because I didn't support Donald Trump and I was criticized. I had critiques of Benjamin Netanyahu. So that's a non-starter. But if there were a more substantive argument that they were asserting that I held, like I want, I'm in favor of Hamas's, their terrorist actions on October 7th and since. No, there's no need for me to defend a position like that. There's no need for me to start defending Hamas. There is no need for me to do that. I have critiques of Netanyahu. I have critiques and feel that people who broke the law in the summer of 2020 should have been prosecuted and punished properly for their illegal actions. But because I was supportive generally of the protests after George Floyd was killed, and still am, that I have no need to defend people who engaged in illegal activity. So the short way of saying that is I don't have to defend a position that I don't hold, which by the way is an opportunity to find points of agreement. Oh, so you actually do, you do feel that people who engage in illegal activity should be held accountable. Yes, I do. Even people that arrived at the same conclusions that I did, but crossed whatever lines that there might have been. I still believe in in free speech, the freedom to peaceably assemble, the freedom of redress, the right to redress of grievances. I believe in all of these First Amendment rights. But there are limits to that. Limits of time, place, and manner, for example, when it comes to free speech and assembly. So it opens up an opportunity for a more in-depth conversation. And all of this is what I consider part of clearing the brush. Now, what is clearing the brush? A lot of times when you enter into a conversation, if you have a relationship with the person, there's already context, and that's great. But maybe you haven't discussed these particular issues. So there are a lot of assumptions. They might know one or two top line things like who you voted for president, but they might not know. In my case, like the person that I supported most actively was a Republican for state Senate in my district here in California. So that is an icebreaker. And it's a way to start to break down the assumptions, right? But it's not just all about me. When it comes to clearing the brush is what are assumptions, right? Is what Monty Guzman refers to as chaining. Oh, you voted for Trump, so you must be this, 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 and this. Oh, you voted against Trump, you must be this, 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 and this. So there's a lot of assumptions that kick in once somebody knows one thing about your voting record, or one thing about a position that you hold, or one thing about where you're from, one data point, and then a lot of these other assumptions start to kick in, and they fill in the rest of the picture for you. So here's the way here's a really effective way. And when I do engage in it, because I've messed up a lot of times, I've entered into this starting with a list of things like, I'm not this, I'm not that, you assume this and you assume that, and I'm coming at them in an active way. When those conversations tend to go better is when I'm leaning back a little bit and allowing that person to tell their story, allowing people to tell their story, because just as they might be making assumptions about me, like they see my hat. Sometimes I'm wearing a Mets hat. Oh, you're a Mets hat. You must be from New York. You must be a liberal. You must be a this. You must, no. I'm a Mets fan. The only thing you can assume as me being a Mets fan is I'm right, and I got more character than Yankee fan. No, I'm just kidding, sort of. Or they might see salty soul. I am a salty soul. Damn it. So you can make that assumption. I'm a salty soul, but a lot of folks, but I do it too. That's the thing. I do it too. I see a guy. Oh, I'll tell you a quick story. I saw a guy yesterday. I was coming out of the barbershop. I got a haircut. It's still, my hair still haven't figured out what to do since I cut it. Anyway, I saw a guy with a Make America Great Again hat on. And I didn't jump to any conclusions. I didn't even take too much notice of it. It's something, it's red, it stands out. And he was looking at this really sweet hog, this Harley. And I was actually beautifully painted. It had that like matte finish, and whoever's bike it was, they started tricking it out, some hard bags on the back, and they had like a sissy bar, just and it looked like they pulled the handlebars back. So I went over. I was just kind of admiring the bike with the same guy who was looking at the same bike that I was. It was clear that it wasn't his bike because we were just sort of admiring it. And then we started talking about the bike and riding, and he told me that he was, if he was going to get another bike, I forgot what he told me he was riding previously, but he had ridden before. And I told him about the Harley I had. I had a Dyna Super Glide when they were still making them. And I told him how I tricked it out, and he was telling me if he got another bike, it would be a trike. And I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense. Take some of the danger out of it. And we got into a conversation. Politics didn't come up, but it was something interesting that happened when I was walking. Hey man, good luck if you get that. Ride safe, man. If you get that trike, wish you the best. And walking away, he shook my hand. Hey, nice to meet you. Nice talking to you. And he goes, you're a good man. Like that was like, I don't know. It was just, does he not talk to people? Like, it was really nice of him to say, but all we did was talk about the Harley we were looking at, right? So it was a really nice reaction, but it was also a nice connection. I wonder if I rolled out with, well, I fucking hate Trump. Like I wonder if I rolled out with that and started the conversation there, if it would have gone anywhere, right? Or if it would have gone someplace different. But it wasn't. It was just a human connection. He happened to be wearing the red hat, and I hate Donald Trump. And again, I don't start. I need to make this clear every time I say it. I need to make it clear. I don't start with the assumption that I hate Trump. Donald Trump gives me a reason to hate his words, actions, and character on a daily basis. He renews it every day. Treasure trove of reasons. If you are a person who's committed to a moral, ethical standard, you don't need to look too far, too long to find reasons to be very much against the words, actions, character of Donald Trump. So I just need to make that clear. But I didn't talk about that with this guy. He happens to be a Trump fan. I'm clearly not. But that didn't come up at all. We were just talking about a bike. And as I was walking away, he shakes me. Hey, you're a good man. I'm like, how do you know that? I might be a complete asshole, which I kind of am. Um, but the point is, we just made a connection, right? In that case, he told me a little bit about his story about him, how he used to ride and what he misses about it. And, I got to know a little bit of something about who he is as a human being beyond just what I saw, the hat that I saw him wearing, right? So allow people to tell their story and share who they are uniquely as a human being. And if you do get into the politics and religion stuff, there's oftentimes a unique combo of beliefs and positions that they hold. Like somebody might be pro-life, and because they're pro-life, they have strong views about gun legislation to restrict gun ownership. Like we often connect somebody who's pro-life, anti-abortion with people who are pro-gun, more guns, right? Easier access to guns or whatever. I'm oversimplifying that, obviously. So, don't hit me with all of your complaints about me oversimplifying the, pro-life, anti-abort. That's not the point. The point is that a lot of people have an interesting combination of beliefs. So if you allow somebody to tell their story, geez, getting all worked up here. If you if you allow somebody to tell their story, then there's at least a context. You see who they are, what they're all about, where they come from, how they arrived at certain positions, and then when you do get into specific positions, it's much more contextual, um, and there's a better chance that you'll connect with them on a more human level, as opposed to you know, just putting I have the blue hat on, he has the red hat on, and then now we're gonna fight, right? You're wearing jerseys, you're wearing uniforms, and you're all of a sudden aligned in some sort of a contest. Um, but the other thing that when I'm better at it, when I allow somebody to talk about their story and hear more about the nuance of the views that they hold, then it actually opens the door for me to do a little bit of that. I don't try, like if I'm doing well and I'm restrained and patient, and my ego is in check, it really isn't about me. Because it's funny, it's ironic that people feel like they get to know you better if you allow them to tell you about them. Like the more I let somebody talk about themselves, it's ironic that they feel like they get to know me better. And it's not because I'm talking to them, I'm sharing my story or anything, or they're learning about my backstory. But I've just literally over the last 25, almost 30 years now, one of my part about one of my jobs is talking to people and learning about their stories, learning about their professional background, how they got into what they're doing, and just that's how my lunches and dinners go in this particular business is asking people about them. And I do very little talking because that's my job is to learn about people and their backgrounds and stuff and what they've worked on and what they're looking for and that kind of thing. And ironically, even though I'm doing maybe 25% of the talking or less, people feel like they get to know me because I we create a space for them to talk about themselves. It's really interesting. It's this ironic, beautiful, poetic thing that happens. But when you do allow someone to tell you who they are on a deeper level, because we are storytelling creatures, human beings are storytelling creatures, and learn their story, it opens the door for you. If you do want to share some of your story, they're almost more interested. The ground has been fertilized in a way for you to be able to tell your story. There's a little bit more room for that. Um, and again, what that all does is it begins to clear the brush of assumptions and stereotypes. You're from New York, you're Jewish, you've lived in California, New York, and you know, there's plenty of assumptions and stereotypes that come along with that. And I love it when I'm able to meet someone, have that conversation, and come across the first moment when I realize something about them that I didn't expect, or vice versa. It's really great. And what this all does is it sets up an atmosphere where people can have conversations instead of contests. That's what I'm interested in. I am not interested in contests. I'm not interested in debates because frankly, nobody wins. You might feel like you're winning if you get into a debate and you hammer them with, points A, B, and C, and then they come back at you and then you refute their comebacks and then it goes back and forth and you had the perfect comeback for every one of their comebacks, and great. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe you scored two more points than they did, and you feel like you won the debate. So, who freaking cares? You feel like you convinced them? You feel like you convinced anybody that was listening in? Did you get anything done? I guarantee you, no. The answer is no. But you know what does happen? When I have a conversation with somebody, I'm planting the seeds for a relationship. I'm planting seeds instead of having some sort of imaginary transaction. I'm having it's something that's transactional. You know what's better than transactional is relational. And that's in business as well as these conversations. I'm looking for relational over transactional. I'm looking for conversations if it's just like a one-time thing that we're going to be talking about, conversations and not contests, not debates, right? So really great example of this. We aired a conversation with Daryl Davis on the show. Now, I don't know if you know Daryl Davis. If you don't, you should. Daryl Davis is an African-American musician. He's been traveling the whole country, in fact, the whole world for decades. Brilliant blues and jazz and rock and roll, and he's kind of multi-genre musician. He's brilliant, and a lot of his travels has taken him all around the different parts of the country. And over time, he's met a number of KKK members, country bars or whatever that he's played in, or different regions of the country where there's more prominence of KKK membership. And he has, I don't know what the right word for it is, but basically he's had conversations with dozens, if not literally hundreds of KKK members. And these conversations have led to literally dozens, if not hundreds of these KKK members putting down their robes. And in fact, he has, in many cases, they actually give him their robes. They say they're renouncing their membership in the KKK. Now, how do you think that happens? It doesn't happen with Daryl Davis in this instance, coming off stage, getting into one conversation, spewing a bunch of facts and information and statistics, and that person be like, oh, I didn't know that statistic. I'm going to leave the KKK. That's not how that happens. Daryl Davis's superpower is listening to these people's experiences as a way to make a connection, as a way to start to develop a relationship. Because if that KKK member knows even just one guy, in this case, Daryl Davis, it begins to break down those walls. Oh, I thought I knew everything I needed to know about all those people, right? In this case, African Americans. But now they know somebody that they have a relationship with, that they've at least had a real human conversation with. So it's the conversations that lead to relationships, that lead to epiphanies. Not the stats, not winning a debate, not trying to, do anything like that, but having actual conversations. So I really encourage you, seek out Daryl Davis. I bet if you type I'll put it in the show notes. I'll put a couple good links, or at least one good link so you have a resource to learn more about Daryl and how he's gone about it. But that's how it's done. The road to solving a lot of what ails us is not in winning debates. It's in having healthier conversations and nurturing relationships through these human connections that are, and the currency are good conversations where you're doing more listening than talking, and allowing people to tell their stories. So that's a little bit of what I wanted to share with you today. Again, a few of the things that help me, a few tools that I have to keep on circling back to, because again, a lot of times when I enter into these conversations, I mess up. Again, this is not something that I'm expert at. I'm more of a student of, and this is what I'm learning along the way. And when the conversations and relationships have gone better for me, and the ones that I've heard about and studied that have gone better, these are a few of the tools that have really helped. It's about setting boundaries and being clear on your own limitations. So no need to submit to interrogation. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to defend positions you don't hold. It's about clearing the brush of assumptions and stereotypes. Whether you're allowing someone to clear the brush of maybe assumptions that you're making about them or vice versa, and seeking conversation and not a contest, seeking conversations and not a debate, seeking conversations as the currency towards nurturing a relationship, setting boundaries, being clear on your own limitations, clearing the brush, seeking conversations and not debates. So that's what I got today. As always, if you dig what we're doing here, remember to follow the show, write the review, do all those things I was telling you about at the beginning. All that stuff, it really does help. You can watch conversations on YouTube, support us on Patreon. We have all these links in the show notes. Your support really does make a difference. So thank you for all of it. Now, go talk some politics and religion with gentleness and respect and setting boundaries and being clear on your limitations and clearing the brush and seeking conversations, not contests. And have a great week. You get me, feel it, you get me, feel it.